This is another video on the Jet release, full profitability release. I'm gonna show you guys how to switch to full profitability, like once you've upgraded your current version to this release. So the way to do it is to go into the config section. And add the config setting enforce profitability and set it equal to true. Save it. And then jet restart rebalancer. So while the rebalancer is being restarted, you can also restart the monitor. So it's going to pick up the new setting. It just takes a little bit of time to load the data. Okay, so the data is loaded, and as you can see, there is an immediate difference between the monitor that was run on the previous version, which was before the switch to profitability, and the current one. And specifically, there is no longer an override. And so when profitability is enforced, Jet is not gonna override the local ppm value, and it's gonna keep it as the max. So for example, okay, so that's basically the same as it was, 575, which is again the local max. 425 is the local max at the moment, 225 and 175. So even though Jet notices that the current local is not in the upper range, upper in that range, upper value, and it warns it, it still keeps it on, right? It keeps it on as the max ppm. It caps it at 225 as the local ppm. So another interesting thing is that with respect to the Bcash, again, exactly the same as before, it noticed that Bcash changed the fees within 3 times over the past 24 hours, and hence Jet does not suggest to revisit the fee, because it does not really make sense to muck around with fees for peers that change their fees too often. And as we go to this section, we see more of the peers showing up as paused, more of the rebalancing or rebalances showing up as paused. And because, again, the remote fee exceeds local. Right, so the remote fee currently, for example, on Catcher and the Eye is 1, and remote is local. So by setting the max ppm to 1, there is really no room to rebalance, right? Because the minimum cost to rebalance is going to be 390. And in the same way as we did before, we can say look at germinal cancer and do analyze fees. Again, you don't have to put the full name, or it can be a partial name as long as it uniquely resolves to this node. And what we can see is that, okay, so that's the current one. There is a local, which is 225. That's remote is 100. The max ppm is currently at 500. It's not being enforced. And the profitability is enforced. We set the maximum to 25 because it's the current local. And the Jet warns that, okay, there is an insufficient buffer between optimal max, which is currently at 225, and the remote ppm, which is currently at 100. And it suggests that the local ppm range is 120 to 300. In summary, once you set this config variable in the config JSON, enforce profitability to true, and you need to restart the rebalancer, all of the non-profitable rebalances are going to be paused. So if you have some rebalances that are already in flight when you change at the time when you change that setting, right, those will wrap up, but no new rebalances will be launched for the peers that are paused, that are in status paused.